I never imagined a simple piece of paper could ruin a perfectly good morning, but there it was. Bright pink, tucked under the windshield wiper of my car like a slap in the face. I froze, my heart skipping a beat as I yanked it free. The bold black letters screamed at me. $150 fine. Driveway violation. What? My stomach dropped. This was our driveway. I looked around in disbelief, half expecting a hidden camera crew to jump out and shout gotcha. But there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of sprinklers and birds. I stormed back inside, paper in hand. Dad! I shouted, you need to see this. My father, Thomas Reynolds, glanced up from his coffee, brows furrowing. As a senior loan officer at First National Bank, he dealt with numbers and rules all day long. But even he looked puzzled as he read the ticket. This makes no sense, he muttered. Section 7.3 of the Pinecrest Gardens HOA bylaws prohibits more than 2 vehicles parked in a residential driveway at any given time. You had 5. I blinked. It was true. Last night had been my sister Jenny's graduation party. A few aunts and uncles stayed over, their cars lined up in our own driveway, not even on the street. No one had complained. It had seemed harmless. Until now. Mom appeared in her bathrobe, reading the citation over Dad's shoulder. That's ridiculous. It's our property. Dad reached for his phone. I'm calling the HOA right now. I watched his face harden as the call connected. He put it on speaker. Pinecrest Gardens HOA, this is Karen Matthews, a clipped voice. Confident. Condescending. Hello, this is Thomas Reynolds at 428 Maple Drive. We received a violation this morning for having guests' cars parked in our own driveway. Surely there's some mistake. Her laugh made my skin crawl. No mistake, Mr. Reynolds. Section 7.3 is very clear. You had 5 cars. That's a $150 fine. My dad kept his tone level, but I saw his jaw tighten. These were overnight guests for a family celebration. Surely there's an exception for special events? Rules are rules, Mr. Reynolds, she snapped. If we allowed everyone to do whatever they wanted, this neighborhood would look like a used car lot. The fine is due in 10 days, or it doubles. Is there a process to appeal this? Dad asked. Karen didn't miss a beat. You can try at the next board meeting. But I should let you know, I'm the president of the HOA, and I personally documented your violation. The evidence is quite clear. The call ended with a click. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then I felt a chill down my spine. I moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. Dad, I whispered, I think she's watching us. Across the street, a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair stood in her driveway, holding her phone and looking directly at our house. She wore high-end athletic wear and sunglasses, but even from here, the smugness was unmistakable. Dad joined me at the window. Karen Matthews, he said softly. She moved in 6 months ago. Elected HOA president last month. Never spoke to her before today. Until now, we'd barely noticed her. But clearly, she'd noticed us. That afternoon, Dad pulled out the HOA agreement we'd signed 3 years ago when we moved in. The driveway rule was real, buried deep on page 37 of a 50-page document. We hadn't even read that far. This is insane, I said. Why would anyone care how many cars are in a driveway for one night? Some people like power, Dad murmured. That's all this is. He looked at the fine in his hand again. Let's pay it for now. But I want to learn more about who's really running this place. He didn't say it out loud, but I saw it in his eyes. Karen had no idea who she had just picked a fight with. By the next morning, another pink slip appeared. This time, on our mailbox. Improper lawn maintenance. Grass exceeds 3.5 inches. Fine, $75. I stared at it, stunned. Dad had mowed the lawn 4 days ago. I ran inside, holding the notice like a crime scene photo. She's targeting us now, I told him. He didn't even look surprised. I figured she might. This is harassment, Mom said, pacing the kitchen. Should we call a lawyer? Dad shook his head, a strange gleam in his eyes. Not yet. Last night I stayed up researching. I found something interesting. The HOA is planning a big renovation of the community center. They're applying for a $1.2 million loan. So? I asked. So that loan needs to be approved within the next month for them to start construction before winter. And guess which bank they applied to? My eyes widened. First National. Your bank? He nodded. And guess who's been assigned to review their application? A slow smile spread across my face. You? Sometimes the universe has a funny way of balancing things out, Dad said softly. At that moment, Karen strolled past our house, camera in hand, bending down to inspect our lawn with a tape measure. She had no idea what she'd started. Over the next few days, the citations kept coming. Garden gnome not on approved decoration list. Wind chimes excessively noisy. Hose not properly stored. Mailbox 1 shade too dark. Each fine was small, but together added up to $425. It wasn't just about us anymore. Our neighbors began to speak up. Mr. Jackson from next door came by, holding a pink slip of his own. Sorry to bother you, he said. But I saw the citation on your car last week and wanted to warn you. Karen's just getting started. He explained how his son's basketball hoop, which had stood for 5 years, was suddenly deemed a hazard and ordered removed. The Garcias had been fined for planting marigolds instead of roses. Mrs. Wilson, who'd lived here for over 30 years, got a notice that her bird feeder was 2 inches taller than allowed. She's on a power trip, Mr. Jackson said. And no one knows how to stop her. At night, Dad stayed up late, buried in property maps and public financial records. The next morning, we discovered he wasn't the only one fed up. One by one, neighbors started showing up at our door, each with their own horror story. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. The Garcias. Dr. Patel, who barely ever left his house. Mrs. Wilson, trembling but furious. Dr. Patel said he got fined for leaving a medical equipment box on his porch for 4 hours. I was in surgery, he said. I couldn't move it right away. Mrs. Wilson wiped tears from her eyes. Those birds are my only company some days. Karen says my feeders attract vermin. Everyone shared their stories. Dad listened, took notes, and finally spoke. Last year, before Karen moved in, the HOA collected about $5,000 in fines for the entire year. In just 2 months under her leadership, they've collected over $122,000. Gasps filled the room. But that's not all. According to the bylaws, fine money must be used for community improvements. But based on their financial records, that money isn't showing up in the official accounts. What does that mean? Someone asked. It means, Dad said, choosing his words carefully. The money might be going somewhere else. And right now, Karen and the board are applying for a $1.2 million loan. So that's a very serious problem. What can we do? Mr. Jackson asked. Dad leaned back. As part of the loan review, I've already requested a complete audit of the HOA finances. It's standard procedure for a loan of this size. Karen won't know I'm the one behind it, but the bank is going to take a very close look at everything. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Zach. OMG, check the neighborhood Facebook page. I opened it, my jaw dropping. Karen had posted a long rant, accusing unnamed residents of lowering property values and ignoring community standards. She didn't mention us by name, but everyone knew. She's trying to turn the neighborhood against us, Mom said, clearly shaken. Dad remained calm. This actually helps us. She's creating a public record of her behavior. That afternoon, while walking our dog Max, I spotted something interesting. Parked beside Karen's best friend Diane's house was a massive RV. We'd read the rules. Recreational vehicles were explicitly prohibited. I took a picture and showed Dad. "Let's start documenting everything," he said. Over dinner, he laid out his plan. "The next HOA board meeting is on Tuesday. I think we should all attend." "Won't she just shut us down?" I asked. "She can try. But HOA bylaws require that members be allowed to speak. And we won't be alone." When Tuesday arrived, the community center was packed. Normally just a handful of retirees showed up. This time, it was standing room only. Karen's smile faltered as she looked at the crowd. She opened the meeting with her usual scripted tone. When she got to the renovation project, she tried to rush through it. "The loan application is proceeding as expected," she said briskly, moving on. "Excuse me," Dad stood up, "as a member of this community, I'd like more information about the loan." Karen's eyes narrowed. "The details are confidential, Mr. Reynolds." "Actually," Dad said, "since this loan uses our shared property as collateral, the members have the right to full disclosure. It's in the bylaws." The room went silent. Karen's face turned red. "Fine. We're borrowing $1.2 million from First National Bank. The application is under review." "And what's the status of that review?" Dad asked, voice perfectly neutral. "There have been some requests for additional documentation," Karen admitted. "Just red tape. Nothing serious." While we're discussing finances, Dad continued, "I'd like to ask about the fines. The quarterly statement lists $3,200, but our street alone has paid more than that." Karen glanced nervously at Diane. "Those fines haven't been processed yet," she said. "It's odd," someone shouted. "I paid mine 8 weeks ago. You cashed my check the next day." A buzz rippled through the room as neighbors started comparing notes. Karen banged her gavel. "This meeting is adjourned," she shouted. As people filed out, talking and whispering, Karen cornered Dad in the hallway. "I don't know what game you're playing, Reynolds," she hissed, "but you're making a powerful enemy." Dad didn't flinch. "I'm not playing games, Karen. I'm making sure our community follows its own rules. All of them." That night, our doorbell rang at midnight. I peeked through the blinds. A figure moved in our yard with a flashlight. Our motion sensor lights flashed on, revealing Karen herself. She froze, then darted back to her car and sped off. The next morning, our garden was destroyed. Plants uprooted, dirt everywhere. Taped to our door, another citation. Landscaping debris. $200 fine. But this time, Karen had made a critical mistake. Our doorbell camera caught everything. That same day, a thick folder landed on Dad's desk at work. Karen's official loan application. He brought it home, spread it across the table, and smiled. "Guess whose signature is on every financial statement?" I suddenly understood. The woman handing out petty fines for wind chimes in Grass Height had just handed my father every reason he needed to bring her down. And she didn't even realize it. The tension in Pinecrest Gardens hit a boiling point. Every day brought a new citation to our doorstep. Tree branch too low. Hose left uncoiled. Mail not collected fast enough. And now, garbage bin visible from the street. A $250 fine for something that wasn't even true. Dad remained calm on the surface, but I could see the fire building behind his eyes. He spent hours on the phone, using his banker voice. Phrases like audit history and unverified expense entries echoed through our walls. Then, one evening, Mom, who's a real estate lawyer, came home and added fuel to the fire. "HOAs are required to maintain detailed financial records," she said. "And members have the legal right to request them, especially when those records are connected to $1 million loan." So the three of us drafted a formal letter requesting 5 years of HOA financial documentation. Dad delivered it himself, straight to Karen's door. I watched from the living room window as she opened the door, recognized him, and went from smug to stunned in half a second. She tried to shut him down, but Dad calmly reminded her that refusal would be a violation of HOA bylaws. She said she'd deliver the documents in 30 days, the maximum time allowed. That gives her time to clean up the mess, Mom said. Not if the bank needs them in 10 business days, Dad replied with a wink. The next week, Karen's retaliation escalated. More ridiculous fines. More angry neighbors. But something had shifted. Through my friend Jake, whose mom worked as the board secretary, we learned that Karen was in panic mode. She was working overtime, reviewing records, and barking orders. She kept saying everything had to be perfect for some bank review. Then, 2 days later, a thick envelope landed at Dad's office. Inside were the HOA's financial records. That night, our dining table disappeared under piles of receipts, spreadsheets, and scanned invoices. Mom and Dad worked late into the night. At midnight, Mom pointed at a line item. They charged for landscaping that was never done. And look here, Dad said, up another page. Reimbursement forms with no receipts. By morning, they had uncovered 27 discrepancies. At work, Dad compared them with the numbers on the loan application. That evening, his face told me everything. It's worse than we thought, he said. They reported significantly more income to the bank than what appears in their actual records. That's fraud, Mom said grimly. The next day, as I checked the mail, Karen appeared out of nowhere, cornering me by the mailbox. Her voice was cold. Her smile fake. Your father needs to approve our loan, she said, jabbing a manicured finger toward me. The community center renovation is important. I stepped back, heart pounding. My dad has to follow banking regulations. If everything's in order, there won't be a problem. Her eyes narrowed. Tell him I'd hate to see your family struggle under all those mounting fines. Maybe if the process goes smoothly, we could reconsider some of them. It hit me like a truck. She was trying to bribe us. I told Dad everything. He listened, quiet and serious, then said in a low voice. She just made a critical mistake. He immediately called the bank's legal department. Within the hour, they launched a formal investigation. This isn't just about parking anymore, he told us. It's about potential fraud. And now, attempted coercion. Meanwhile, word was spreading. A moving truck showed up at Bob Wilson's house 3 days before the next HOA meeting. By nightfall, his family was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. Rumors swirled. By the time the meeting came, the community center was overflowing. I'd never seen it so full. Karen sat at the front, clearly rattled but trying to act composed. She began her speech with forced cheer. There have been baseless rumors about our loan application. Everything is proceeding as expected. That's when Mr. Peterson raised his hand. Is it true Bob Wilson left because of financial misconduct? Karen's smile twitched. Bob relocated for personal reasons. Next question. But Mrs. Gomez from the back stood up. What about the 3 other loans the HOA applied for that got rejected? Karen's eyes darted around the room before landing on Dad. I don't know who's spreading these lies, Karen said, but they're unfounded. Dad rose slowly. My name is Thomas Reynolds, as many of you know, and I work at First National Bank. In full transparency, I've been assigned to review the HOA's loan application. Karen cut him off. You should recuse yourself, Mr. Reynolds. You and your family have a clear conflict of interest. The violations against your household are well documented. The crowd murmured. But Dad remained composed. The violations began only after the loan was submitted and escalated after I was assigned to review it. While I cannot share confidential bank information, I do have a right as a homeowner to discuss HOA financial matters. He clicked a remote. A spreadsheet projected on the wall. This is the financial summary sent to all homeowners in January. He clicked again. And this is the figure reported to the bank in February. There's a discrepancy of nearly $80,000. The room erupted. Karen banged her gavel. Order. Order. But Dad continued. These records also show reimbursements to board members without documentation. The screen displayed expense reports, missing receipts, inflated payments, and, most alarming, he said, selective enforcement. The next slide showed a heat map of violations across the neighborhood. Karen's friends had received almost none. Our street had received over 60%. Karen leapt to her feet. This is a witch hunt. Mr. Reynolds is manipulating data. He's angry because he got fined. Dad looked directly at her. All this information has been submitted to the bank's audit department and to state regulatory authorities. The room exploded. People shouted questions. Accusations flew. Karen's gavel was useless in the chaos. Diane handed Karen a note. Karen read it, and her face turned pale. The vice president called for an emergency board meeting. Outside, reporters waited. Somehow, the press had gotten wind of the story. Karen stormed toward us, mascara smudged, rage in her eyes. "You've ruined everything," she said to Dad. "I was building a legacy. The center was going to be named after my late husband." Dad stood firm. "You bent rules. You misused funds. That's not leadership. That's corruption." Mr. Gonzalez, the retired judge from the end of the street, stepped forward. "According to bylaws, I'm calling for an emergency vote of no confidence." The crowd cheered. Karen screamed. "You'll all regret this." But deep down, she knew the walls were closing in. That night, our trash was knocked over. A car drove slowly past our house 3 times. Someone rang the doorbell at 3 a.m. and ran. "They're trying to scare us," Mom said, gathering debris off the lawn. "Which means we're getting close," Dad replied. News vans lined our street the next morning. A reporter asked me if it was true that my father had exposed a multi-million-dollar HOA fraud ring. I froze, unsure what to say. Dad stepped in. "No comment at this time, but we will have a statement soon." Inside, Mom was on the phone with her legal firm. "This has escalated beyond HOA politics," she said. "We need the district attorney involved." I wondered how our quiet family ended up at the center of something this big. We didn't know it yet, but Karen still had one desperate move left. And she would risk everything to play it.